Hi tankers, take a look at low tier play today in World of Tanks. This is probably one of the earliest heavy tanks that you can get down at tier 4. There aren't many heavy tanks down at tier 4, but this is a real unit, a famous one of World War II, the French Char B1 heavy tank. The Char B1 is one of the earliest tanks you can get to learn the basics of heavy tank play and how to defend and block damage. There are a couple of other options to consider at tier 4, such as the Dirk Bergsvagen 2 and the Matilda. The Matilda is classed as a medium, but really it plays like a heavy. All three have similar playstyles, but each may have several differences with strengths and weaknesses. The Char B1 is something of a seal clubbing tank, although many players will go for the premium version, the Panzer B2. This is under the German nation. In history, the German panzer divisions were so impressed with the French tank that on capturing Char B1s during the invasion of France, they entered them into service, the Panzerkampfwagen B2 740F. The reason the dirty seal clubbers in this game go for this tank is that it has favourable matchmaking, and the tank has very tough armour, as does the Char B1 for its tier, making it suitable for brawling and trading fire. And I might be wrong here, but I think the B2 has preferential matchmaking where the tank only faces tanks of its own tier or below at tier 3. You don't have to be a great player to get a decent battle out of this tank. The Panzer B2 will earn you more credits, which will come in handy as you will have to fire the gold quite a bit at times, which I will mention later when looking at the stats. The Char B1 will be fun at times too. This tank also gets favourable matchmaking, only having to face tier 5 tanks at most, so you will never be 2 tiers down with the Char B1. This will make the B1's armour effective, plus the lack of penetration on its 47mm gun will be sufficient for most encounters when firing the gold. The tank can also utilise its high rate of fire and large hit point pool against tanks at tier 5. This is what makes this tank formidable in lower tier games. Let's take a quick look at the stats. So firepower, bit lacking on the alpha damage at 55, but this has an incredible rate of fire. This tank fires rapidly. If you have a good aim and can consistently pen shots, it will be death by 1,000 cuts for the enemy. The DPM is hard to judge down at lower tiers in terms of whether it is good or not, but the main thing is you have the rapid fire rate of 30.48 rounds a minute that can make up for the lack of damage per shot, providing you aim well. The penetration is poor on the standard shell at 66mm, but you can still be profitable with credits using the Char B1 if you are selective on how you use the gold ammo. Many low tier tanks can be easily penetrated with standard AP, especially the many light tanks you will face. In tier 5 matchmaking you will struggle and you definitely need to carry gold shells. If you can build enough credits in your account and or run premium time a lot, it might be best to have 50% of your shells as gold premium APCR ammo. And this is a reason why pro seal clubbers will go for the premium Panzer B2 to earn extra credits to cover the expensive gold ammo spamming. Dispersion is not awful at 0.38, Vents has it down to 0.37, and bearing in mind that you'll be in close quarters fighting often, I don't think this will be too much of an issue. Survivability is where the strengths lie with this tank. The amount of hit points is very good for a tier 4 tank at 660. This will be useful when trading fire and keeping you in the game. You might be thinking that the 60mm of frontal hull armour is not that much, but many tanks at low tiers have bad pen on their standard shells. There will be many players who refuse to fire the gold ammo, and so your tank will bounce a lot of shots. You can also angle the tank, which increases the chance of a bounce. This is a tactic you should learn early on when playing heavy tanks. The turret doesn't have the same armour frontally, it has 46mm, but it is very small and not always easy to hit, I can tell you from experience. A lot of B1 players go hull down and just expose the turret, and it can be hard to hit, especially as low tier tanks don't have the great dispersion values, you don't have the accuracy. There are weak spots. If we just highlight here on Tanks GG, the driver's window and the hull mounted gun are weak spots that the enemy might be able to pen more easily. The hull mounted gun is not a secondary weapon, by the way. It's a pity you don't get the 75mm gun, as I feel the tank could do with a bit more firepower. You only get one gun in World of Tanks. Against tier 5s, the tank is seen as a bit of a pinata, as you can see by the size of it, but this is a good way to learn how to defend your tank when you're up against it with bad matchmaking. I can tell you it only gets worse when you play high tier tanks. The speed and mobility is surprisingly not bad. Power to weight ratio is not great and it might struggle going up hills and slopes, but this tank is a street fighter, not designed for fighting in the hills. At a top speed of 30 km per hour, it's on par with some of the mediums in the low tiers. This will be useful if you need to relocate and move around the map. You have the potential to make a crucial contribution. Compare this to another rapid firing tank with armour, the Matilda at tier 4. That British tank is so slow that you might be too late to the party and the battle is nearly finished. I still play the Matilda from time to time. Concealment, forget about it, no parking in the bushes with this tank. The tank is more for city fighting. View range is not the best, and so you rely on teammates to spot for you, and it could be a big problem at the end of the game, and there's only you alive and the enemy has light or medium tanks still alive. Now, signal range used to be poor on this tank in the game, which is no surprise as in real life the French Char B1 did not have a radio installed. I think communication was done by Morse code. I'll have to do a bit of research for a historical chat on this in the future. Ironic that the French built a tank ahead of its time that could still perform well in World War II, but the French were also way behind on radio communications. The Panzer B2, the premium version, did have better signal range in the game, as in history when the Germans captured and entered the tank into panzer battalions, radios were installed. It seems like Wargaming have improved the signal range a lot since I last played the B1. I've boosted the signal range by 17 with vents, but without it would be 740. I'm sure that used to be far less, which would be historically accurate, but Wargaming doesn't seem to care about facts and historical accuracy these days. Enough of the stats, we're going to watch me playing the Char B1. Hadn't played it for a while, not had it in the garage. I have bad crew and only vents as equipment, but it's only low tier fun. I don't have this tank as a keeper. I played through for the tier 5 BDR G1B. I stuck with the British Matilda at tier 4, me being British, which plays quite similar, and so sold the B1. First battle, Ensk. This is a perfect map for the Char B1. This is going to be peekaboo fighting. I'm also going to show you the bad balance of World of Tanks. It's not just the +2 matchmaking, it can be about what's on your team and what's on the enemy team as well. Now I get my first opportunity here. The M3 Stuart is YOLOing, I'm not sure what he's doing. You do get these sort of players down at low tiers. My 14 TP teammate spots him and I get my first opportunities. Missed the first shot, but then I got my range in and farmed this M3 Stuart and got a kill. I wasn't expecting that so early on. So I'm pushing forward. This is sort of like the main choke point area on Ensk in the city. I've got a lot of enemy coming and I don't have a lot of teammates around me. I've got an M3 Stuart, and you can see in this sort of top left hand corner on my team lots of tank destroyers, and that's an example of the bad balance. I'll explain that a bit later, but I become isolated here. I do have a very good battle, so this is peekaboo fighting up. I'm just waiting for the enemy to poke around. I fire and then I can reverse. So there we go, there's the enemy. I don't reverse that much here because the enemy there, the Samoa, is not facing me and I get a couple of hits in. So it started off nice, I getting some damage in. The problem is I become isolated very quickly, and it's because my tank destroyers are parked at the back of the map, and it's not their fault because they're playing their tank destroyers the right way, how they should play it. The problem is the matchmaking and balance in the game. So again, I'm just getting those shots in as enemy peek around the corners, and now we've got an S35 coming up against me. I'm trying to rock the tank to bounce. I don't bounce his shell, but I do bounce the P2640. So that's something to think about when you're playing heavies. Not only angling the tank, but also try and rock the tank, get a bit of movement, try and bounce. And now I'm getting swarmed because I've not got enough teammates around this position. Now you might think this is a bit stupid, exposing all my side to the T28, but I've got about 3 tanks on my flank, and so I'm facing forwards to them to try and bounce. And it actually keeps me in the game to try and farm that T28. As you can see there, I've got 3 enemy team players firing on me. So I kept the front of my tank facing them. And I unfortunately had to just expose my side and take the hits from the T28. But I farmed a lot of damage, and I did about over 800 damage in total, which is probably the best I did in the 2 sessions. This shows you the struggles with matchmaking. It's not just about the +2 matchmaking. It's also the fact that sometimes your team can have lots of tank destroyers, and those sort of sniper tank destroyers that want to stay at the back of the map. You can't fault the player because that's the way they've got to play the tank destroyer. It's the best way. It's the fault of wargaming by putting too many tank destroyers on one team, and then the other team has a nice balance. They've got mediums, heavies, and just a couple of tank destroyers. So they're pushing lots of tanks forward into those choke points, and then you get swarmed. And then, well, you've just got to rely on those tank destroyers at the back of the map to see if they're going to have a good game, which usually isn't the case. They get swarmed as well. And then you get those one-sided snowball games. So it's not just the +2 that everyone's moaning about, the +2 matchmaking. Second battle, Redshire. And this time we're against tier 5s. So I want to show you what you can do when you're against the tier 5s, and you've kind of got to think of yourself more as a team player, which is unheard of in World of Tanks, but I think that's what you've got to do with this Char B1. You've got to think about what can I do to help the team to get a win, because you're not going to do loads of damage with this tank against the tier 5s. It's about hanging in there and using your armour and using it effectively. Now, this I think is encounter, where both teams have got to go for the base, and I think my team's forgotten about that because they've all gone down one flank like lemmings, which you do get these sort of teams, and I'm starting to get concerned here already. I'm thinking, well, we've got to go for the base here because the enemy could swarm that base, and this battle could be over very, very quickly because one team caps and the other team stays away from the base, and it does happen quite often on this game mode, and that's what happens here. Although we did turn it around and we do get the win, and I'll show you how it happens. I really wanted to go for the base here, but I'm leaving myself exposed. I could get sniped. There's the T1 heavy and I can't pen it. This will show how the penetration on the Char B1 is pretty awful on the standard shells, because there's the T1 heavy exposing all of his side and I can't pen it with the standard shells. And I quickly think, right, I'm definitely going to need the gold ammo here. I really thought I could pen that actually, but obviously from distance as well, the penetration value drops. So yeah, when you get this kind of matchmaking, I'll just switch to the gold, to be honest. I'm spotted again, so it's kind of a bit of a mistake for me, but I really wanted to get to the base because my team are staying right back on that other side on the flank. They're not even thinking about the base. I'm thinking they're all thinking this is a standard battle or something. And I get hit another time by the M8A1 who's sniping. But I knew that there's a rock there. I knew there was a bit of cover for me to reverse and get behind. And now I think I've got to approach the base from the other side of the hill here. There's no way I'm getting through that way. I'm just going to get taken out. So I go around the other way, and I'm really getting concerned about the base now because you can see all the enemy are swarming that base ready to cap. And my team, the lemming team, are all on one side, on one flank, not even thinking about the base capture. So we're going to lose this pretty quickly if we don't do something. So I decide to lead the spearhead attack pretty much alone, although I do get the M4A1 who gives me some support later, as we'll see. I'm now asking the team to cap. I've pinged, please capture the base, but I don't get any answer. There's no players coming across, so it's down to me, and I make a crucial contribution here. I'm thinking, what can I do to get a win here? So I know I've got to decap. I'm going to have to use my armour. I'm going to take some hits, but I've got to try and spot players on the cap and try and decap it, and that's exactly what I do here. I spot that, I think it's the T1 heavy again. It's actually all the field 14 TP, but I managed to get a hit on that. It's the 14 TP. I also spot the T1 heavy, so my teammates are then able to decap, and I've just saved the day there. If I hadn't made this contribution here, I think we would have lost the game. Now I'm waiting here because I could get smashed by that Cruiser 4. I blocked a bit of his damage, but if he switches to gold, he could annihilate me here, so I've got to be very careful. So I'm waiting patiently. I've done my bit of decapping. It's kept us in the game now, and we're sort of turning it around. It's now 4-all, and some players are coming across now. They've finally realised, you know, we've actually got to go for the base here. This is what this game mode's about. And some of them are coming across, but there's still a lot still waiting there. And my G Destroyer teammate does me a big favour here by spotting some of those light tanks, including that Cruiser 4. And I'm able to farm some damage on him. And I get some more damage for myself. So now I'm thinking, my team's starting to come across a bit. We've sort of decapped, we've kept ourselves in the game. But I know there's a lot of enemy on the other flank where the castle is now, and I see my Matildas pushing up. So I'm thinking, what can I do now to help the team? And what I want to do is try and distract a lot of the enemy from that base and bring them over to this flank, which could then buy time for my teammates to come across, hopefully, to the base, because a lot of them are still standing waiting around on that flank again. They've got the M10 RBFM, the STVZ39, there's a Wolverine, all on my team, still parked on that flank, staying back. We really need them to get across and get involved, but they're just waiting there, camping. So I think let's try and distract the enemy. Let's get the enemy across here to this flank, take them away from the base. The Matilda does that. He doesn't have a great battle, but I do think he makes a crucial contribution as well by distracting the enemy here. And I back him up. And it's mainly light tanks, so hopefully my armour can just hold up for a bit. I could get taken out, I know this, I might get killed here, but it might just help the team to victory here. And there's the Lux, tried to get a hit, missed him. I'm now sort of exposed quite a bit. So if there's any snipers, and there's an M10 RBFM who does get the hit on me, so I wisely retreat, get behind some cover. And now a lot of the enemy are focused on me now, which is not a bad thing. It distracted them from the base. And I get a couple of hits on the Lux, and I take quite a bit of damage, but I did block some as well, kept me in the game, and the Matilda's coming across. And I think I've done my job here by distracting them all. I get one more hit on the Matilda before I'm taken out. I go down fighting, but I think there's two crucial contributions there that helped us to the win, because my team did come across in the end. They got across to the base, they all got onto the cap, and then the enemy, they got taken out one by one as they were pushing for the base, and we got the victory. So that just shows you that when you are a tier down, just try and make yourself useful in any way to try and get the win. And using your armour, make your armour effective. You probably won't do a lot of damage, but you could be like a battering ram for your teammates. You know, distracting enemy, taking fire, so your teammates can get in there and get their hits in, or do what they've got to do to get us the win. Last battle to show you on Mannerheim, and I want to show you two other abilities of this tank. It's not all about the armour. One is the hit points that can keep me in the game, and two, the ability to go hull down. That is an option for this tank. So I'm going down the heavy line, the usual heavy line on Mannerheim, and I meet two pretty strong tanks at tier 4, and if these tanks had survived, they probably would have won the battle. So one is the Panzer B2, which has just popped up now, and the other one is a very pesky, annoying M8A1. It does become a bit of a nuisance for me. So I'm staying back at this point. I mean, firing at distance with this tank, the handling's not too bad, but we saw on Red Shire that the penetration of the shells at distance is such a drop off. You're not going to pen, even against an M8A1, which does not have much armour, the shell is going to struggle to pen it. And you see I took a shot there, no chance there against that Panzer B2. So the Panzer B2 is the premium version of this tank, very strong tank at tier 4. We need to remove that tank as quickly as possible, and someone's done a good job there of removing half of its hit points already, so that's going to make life easier of trying to take this tank out. My focus at this point was on that Panzer B2, but it's actually M8A1 that proves a bit of trouble for me at the back of the map here, because I'm sort of wanting to poke out against that Panzer B2. I then see the M8A1 pop up, and I want to actually take a shot at him. I'm thinking I'm okay. I think he's going to struggle to pen me, but he actually gets a shot on me here. I take a shot, can't pen because of the terrible penetration on the shell. He takes a hit and actually pens me, so I was quite surprised by that. I then think, right, I want to get right down into a hull down position. So I take another risk here, and I do take another hit, but I'm not panicking here. I've taken a couple of hits. Yes, my hit points have gone down, but I've got hit points to play with. I'm not panicking or anything at this point. I want to get into hull down positions. I want to go right down this flank here along the coastline. I want to take out this Panzer B2. If we take him out, we've got a chance of winning this game. We also need to take out that M8A1, who's quickly coming round. He's seen the trouble that I might be, I need to get this Panzer B2 gone quickly, and I do. I was able to block a couple of his shots as well, and he was firing gold. So that shows you the armour that I've got. But I'm actually taking hits again from this M8A1 who really was pesky for me. I need to get rid of him as well, because these were two very dangerous tanks on the enemy team. Because the M8A1 is a very sneaky sniper tank that, if he's left long into the battle, could win it for the opposition. I'm super aggressive here. I take another hit, so I'm demonstrating the hit points on this vehicle. I think in any other tank here in this situation, I would have probably been back in the garage, because I kept taking hits from this M8A1, but I didn't die. I stayed in the game and I removed him as well, and that's two dangerous opponents taken out. So now I'm trying to get up here. I want to get into that hull down position I'm talking about. So if I just try and get past this M8A1, proved to be a bit tricky, but I managed to get around him. And here's where I demonstrate the hull down position. And if you can get into these positions on these sort of wide open maps, and in the right situation, you can absolutely annihilate the enemy. And this is where some of these really good SEAL clubbers, pick up 2,000 damage in a battle. It all depends on how many of the enemy are waiting at the back of the map. And there's one there, the T-28. Now he's focused on me. He knows he wants to take a shot at me, but it's going to be very difficult to aim properly and hit this small turret. The turret on this Char B1 is very weak actually, apart from the gun mantlet, but it's so small it's hard to hit, and from distance really difficult to aim properly and hit it, and that's why going hull down with this tank is a really good option. I managed to get another 2 kills there. I took out the T-28 and the T-40, and I racked up 4 kills. That was about it for this battle. There's no point showing you more. We got the victory, but that shows you a couple of other abilities of this tank. You've got the hit points to stay in the fight, and you can go hull down as well, which is going to be a great option if you're on open maps, hilly terrain, there's mounds, ridge lines. Just use the terrain to your advantage. So the Char B1 can be a lot of fun if you can get decent matchmaking. When you find yourself up against tier 5s though, it is more about what you can do for your team to get the win. Could be by blocking damage, distracting enemies to give your teammates the opportunity to fire, capping, or just holding up a flank and providing base defense. So don't expect to get a battle often where you're doing 2,000 damage against tier 5s. The tank can also be something of a stat padder. I know a lot of players do this. They play a competitive lower tier tank to increase their win rate. If you play well with the B1 or the premium version Panzer B2, then expect your win rate to receive a boost. This was my first session playing with it. I played 2 sessions, 7 out of 8 battles were victories. The other session was 4 wins out of 6 battles. I might just keep the Char B1 now. Might be a keeper after all. Okay, I'll see you next time.